Hello everyone. All right, today I want to talk about glazing our ceramic art, okay? So I'm just going to use this one as an example. I know everybody made a different project, so your project might not look like this, but glazing techniques are going to be the same for every class. What you're going to do is when you go sit at your table, I'm going to call the quietest tables first to go and find their project on the cart or on the table. Once you find it, go by the sink and get a paper towel. This is to protect the bottom of our project, okay? And I'll explain that in just a second. You are going to then find the table that you want to start glazing. And glaze, remember, is just that paint that has a reaction with heat and it will turn into glass, okay? So I'm going to go to the green table, and the green table has green glaze. There's 4 paintbrushes and 4 chairs. That means 4 people can be at this station. Now, make sure you're always keeping your art on the paper towel. And I'll tell you why in just a second. I'm on my first color, and this table is actually really clean because no one has used it yet. Now, I'm going to put my paintbrush in. Just the tip needs to go in. You don't need to dump the whole paintbrush in, otherwise your handle is going to get all dirty. Okay? So now let's say I just want to paint the arms of my little creature here green. So I'm putting a thin layer of green glaze on here. Doesn't have to be really thick, but make sure you cover all the areas that you want covered in green. Don't leave little white areas. If you leave a little bit of white, it's going to come back with the clay just looking white in that spot. Okay? The glaze doesn't fill in. It's not like it heats up and it melts and it kind of, fills in those areas like butter would. Glaze does not work like that. It stays exactly where you put it, even when it reacts with heat. So now I have 1 layer of this glaze done. Glazed, it dries really, really fast. So now I'm going to let it dry, and I'm just going to kind of sit it down. Then maybe 10, 20 seconds later, just kind of watch it. You'll know when it's dry because it starts to look more like chalk paint. It doesn't look shiny. Shiny means it's wet. When it looks chalky, then it's dry. Okay? So once it starts to look dry, do a second coat of that green. So once I see that it's pretty dry, and you can also, if you're just kind of sitting around, sometimes I just kind of blow on it very lightly, and it really speeds up the drying process. But it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. So now I see it's turning chalky. So now I'm going to do a quick thin layer, a second coat on that green little monster arm. And let me get that coat on there, and then I'm going to show you what to do next. And I don't think I put a second, there we go. You can tell you have a second layer on it because now it will look all shiny again. The paint looks all wet, okay? Leave the paintbrush here on the paper plate. We're not setting them on the table, and that's because then someone might bring their ceramic project over and set it down on your little puddle. Okay, so now I'm going to go to a new table because I want to go and paint the tongue pink, okay? And so what you're going to do is you're going to pick up your project with the paper towel under it. Use 2 hands. Do not walk around with this just carrying it with 1 hand, okay? 2 hands on here really tightly. If they drop, they break. Go find your next table spot. Then put your project down and do the same process again. So I would go find the pink table. If there's an open chair and an open paintbrush, I'll paint 1 coat on my tongue. I'll wait for it to dry, paint a second coat. Okay? And then you can keep moving around the room. The only thing is you cannot change stations until this layer is dry. Okay? So my green right now, it's not dry. So I can't go over to the pink table. I'm stuck here for a minute, just kind of waiting for it to dry. And this is the time where if you want to blow on it, go for it really lightly. But the less handling that you do of your project, the less likely it's going to break. Okay? So once it's dry, then I can move. Another rule for glazing, just in case I haven't mentioned it yet today, there can be no glaze on the bottom of your project. Okay, so set it on the table and look and see what touches the table. Get a side view, get really low and look at it. Like, do any of your arms, legs, or any other parts of your project, do they touch the table? If they do, there can be no glaze on it. Okay, so this, I can paint everything. I can cover this whole project with glaze except for the bottom of this project. So I'm going to leave like a area like this on the bottom with nothing. It will just be left alone, nice and clean. If you accidentally set your project in somebody's little puddle of glaze, like a drip or something, you have to go to the sink, get a paper towel, get it wet, squeeze the water out of it, and wipe that bottom clean. All the glaze has to be off. If you don't get it off, you guys, what will happen is your project, when it heats up in the kiln, it sits on a shelf like that. And when it heats up and this glaze starts to turn into glass, it works like a glue and it permanently sticks your project onto the kiln shelf. And then in order to get it off, I have to break it and scrape it all off to get it unstuck. Okay, and you'll have nothing. So make sure you are only glazing the other parts that do not touch the table when you set it down. But you can glaze. I could glaze all the way down to here on my animal. I could glaze all the way down on each side. I don't have to leave a big area of white. Just where it touches the table has to be left alone and left clean. Okay, so I think I've covered most of the rules. When you are done with your glazing, and your project is all covered, it looks great, you have 2 layers of all the colors that you wanted, go put it back on the cart where you see your teacher's name, because I need to load these into the kiln and fire them for the second time. Okay? All right, you guys, I hope you have fun glazing, and I can't wait to get these back to you so you can see your work complete.